Giant millionaire finds surrogate is a virgin and makes a life-changing decision instantly. The medical report fell from his trembling hands. 3 words that stopped his heart. Patient is virgin. What this billionaire did next in that split second would either destroy an innocent woman's life forever, or save them both. The mahogany desk seemed to shrink beneath Elijah Jackson's imposing frame as he stared at the medical document that had just changed everything. At 6'8" and built like a fortress, he was accustomed to dominating every room he entered, every conversation he commanded. But these 3 words, printed in sterile black ink on crisp white paper, had somehow made him feel smaller than he had in 20 years. What do you think goes through a powerful man's mind when he discovers his carefully laid plans might hurt someone innocent? Share your thoughts below. 3 months earlier, the decision had seemed so simple, so clinical. Elijah needed an heir. At 42, he had built an empire worth $3 billion, owned properties on 4 continents, and commanded the respect of world leaders. But legacy? That required something he couldn't simply purchase or negotiate: a child. His ex-wife Miranda had made it clear during their bitter divorce that she would never bear his children. "I won't bring a child into this cold, calculating world you've created," she had spat, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor of his penthouse as she walked out forever. The surrogate arrangement had been Dr. Richard's suggestion. A business transaction, the fertility specialist had assured him. Clean, legal, with clear boundaries. No emotional complications. Elijah had nodded, appreciating the clinical efficiency. He would provide the genetic material and financial compensation. The surrogate would provide the service. Simple. Transactional. Safe. The screening process had been rigorous. Physical health, psychological evaluation, background checks that would make the FBI proud. He wanted perfection, not just for the child, but for the seamless execution of his plan. Then Kalisha Jones had walked into his life. 23 years old, with eyes that held a depth that made him uncomfortably aware of his own spiritual emptiness. She was beautiful in a way that transcended the artificial perfection he was accustomed to: natural, unguarded, real. Her application had been flawless. Healthy, intelligent, financially motivated, but not desperate enough to raise red flags. Except now, staring at this medical report, Elijah realized how desperately wrong he had been about everything. 2 weeks earlier, Kalisha's hands shook as she filled out the final page of the surrogate application. The coffee shop buzzed with the comfortable chatter of college students and young professionals, but she felt isolated in her corner booth, surrounded by dreams that seemed increasingly out of reach. 23 years old, and she felt ancient. The weight of responsibility had aged her beyond her years. Caring for her sick grandmother who had raised her, working 2 jobs to keep them afloat, watching her nursing school dreams slip away with each unpaid medical bill. "Girl, you sure about this?" her best friend Tosha had asked just that morning, concern etched across her face. "This ain't like donating blood. This is a whole baby we're talking about." Kalisha had nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at her stomach. "Grammy needs that surgery, Tash. Insurance won't cover it, and we're already 3 months behind on rent. This," she gestured at the application, "this could change everything." The compensation was life-changing. $150,000 for carrying the child, with additional payments for medical expenses and prenatal care. It was enough to save Grammy, finish nursing school, and finally breathe without the constant weight of financial panic. But there was something else, something she hadn't told Tosha or anyone else. At 23, Kalisha had never been with a man. Not from lack of opportunity. She had been asked out plenty of times, but from a combination of circumstances that had kept her focused on survival rather than romance. First, there had been caring for Grammy after her stroke when Kalisha was just 18. Then working multiple jobs to keep them housed and fed. Then the constant exhaustion that came with trying to juggle community college classes with full-time work. Somewhere in the chaos of just trying to survive, the normal experiences of young adulthood had passed her by. She had researched the medical procedures extensively. Artificial insemination. Clinical. Sterile. She wouldn't have to explain her inexperience to anyone. The doctors would handle everything with professional discretion. The application asked for sexual history, and she had checked the box marked limited rather than none. It wasn't exactly a lie, She had been kissed, had been touched. But she had never crossed that final line, never given herself completely to another person. As she signed her name at the bottom of the contract, Kalisha tried to ignore the voice in her head that whispered she was about to sell the most precious part of herself to a stranger. Present moment. Elijah set the medical report down with hands that weren't quite steady. Dr. Richards had been thorough in his pre-procedure examination, more thorough than Kalisha had probably expected. The discovery of her virginity had been noted clinically, professionally, but the implications hit Elijah like a physical blow. She had lied. Or at least, she had misled him. But as his initial anger faded, a more uncomfortable emotion took its place. Something that felt disturbingly like protectiveness. This young woman, barely out of childhood herself, was willing to sacrifice her innocence for money. Not for luxury or greed, but for survival. His private investigator's report painted a picture of quiet desperation. A sick grandmother, medical bills, a young woman working herself to exhaustion just to keep her family afloat. The intercom on his desk buzzed. "Mr. Jackson, Miss Jones is here for her appointment." Elijah's throat felt dry. "Send her in." The door opened, and Kalisha entered with the same quiet dignity that had struck him during their first meeting. She wore a simple blue dress that complemented her dark skin, her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail that emphasized the graceful line of her neck. She looked young, vulnerable, and absolutely beautiful. "Good afternoon, Mr. Jackson," she said, her voice steady despite the nervous energy he could sense beneath her composed exterior. "Kalisha." He stood, his massive frame dwarfing her petite figure. "Please sit." She settled into the leather chair across from his desk, her posture perfect despite what he now knew must be considerable anxiety. The medical examination had been scheduled for this morning, with the artificial insemination procedure planned for later in the week. Elijah studied her face, looking for signs of the deception he had initially assumed. Instead, he saw only quiet determination tinged with something that might have been fear. "Is everything all right?" she asked, and he realized he had been staring. "There's been a development," he said carefully, "regarding your medical examination." The color drained from her face, and her hands clenched in her lap. "Is something wrong? Am I not suitable?" The word choice struck him. Suitable. As if she were a product being evaluated for quality control. "Kalisha," he said gently, "Dr. Richards discovered that you haven't." He watched her face transform as understanding dawned. Embarrassment, shame, and something that looked like panic flickered across her features. "I can explain," she said quickly. "I know what the application asked, and I didn't exactly lie, but..." "Why?" The question came out more harshly than he intended. "Why would you risk everything for this?" Tears gathered in her eyes, but she held his gaze. "Because Grammy is dying, Mr. Jackson. And I can't. I can't let her die knowing I could have saved her, but was too proud to do whatever it takes." The medical report fell from his trembling hands. 3 words that stopped his heart. "Patient is virgin." What this billionaire did next in that split second would either destroy an innocent woman's life forever, or save them both. The silence in Elijah's office stretched like a taut wire, ready to snap. Kalisha sat frozen in the leather chair, her dark eyes wide with a mixture of shame and terror as she watched the most powerful man she'd ever met struggle to find words. Dr. Richards had been clinical in his explanation 20 minutes earlier. "Mr. Jackson, there's something you need to know before we proceed." The examination revealed that Miss Jones is inexperienced. Completely inexperienced. The artificial insemination procedure will be her first intimate encounter of any kind. Now, staring at the young woman across from him, Elijah felt something crack inside his chest. A fissure in the armor he'd built around his heart over decades of ruthless business dealings. "Kalisha," he said finally, his voice rougher than he intended. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her hands twisted in her lap, knuckles pale against her dark skin. "Would it have mattered?" she whispered. "Would you have chosen me if you knew?" The question hit him like a physical blow. The honest answer was no. He would have eliminated her from consideration immediately. A virgin surrogate complicated everything. Medically, legally, emotionally. It transformed a simple business transaction into something far more personal, far more dangerous. But looking at her now, at the way she held herself with such quiet dignity despite her obvious fear, Elijah realized that somewhere in the past months of meetings and consultations, this had already stopped being just business. "Tell me about your grandmother," he said instead of answering her question. Kalish's composure cracked slightly. She raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 8. She worked 2 jobs to keep us fed, made sure I stayed in school, dreamed of me becoming a nurse. Her voice caught. The stroke happened 2 years ago. She can't work anymore, can barely speak. The doctors say she needs surgery, but insurance won't cover it because it's considered experimental. And you're willing to sacrifice your first experience for her surgery? I'm willing to sacrifice anything for her. The words came out fierce, desperate. She gave me everything, Mr. Jackson. Her whole life was about making sure I had opportunities she never did. If this is what it takes to save her, then... Stop. Elijah's voice was sharp enough to cut through her building panic. Just stop. He stood abruptly, his massive frame casting a shadow across the desk. The movement sent Kalisha pressing back into her chair, and he realized with uncomfortable clarity that she was afraid of him. Not just nervous, but genuinely frightened. When had he become the kind of man who made innocent young women cower? I need to ask you something, he said, forcing his voice to gentleness. And I need you to be completely honest with me. She nodded, though her hands were shaking now. Has anyone ever made you feel safe, Kalisha? Truly safe? The question seemed to surprise her. She was quiet for a long moment, considering. Grammy, she said finally. When I was little, after the nightmares about the accident, she would hold me and tell me stories about angels who watched over little girls. She made me feel like nothing could hurt me as long as she was there. And now I'm supposed to be the one protecting her. A single tear escaped, sliding down her cheek. But I don't know how to be strong enough. Elijah moved around the desk, each step deliberate and careful. When he reached her chair, he knelt down, an action that brought his imposing height closer to her level, but still left him looking up at her. Kalisha, he said quietly, I want you to listen to me very carefully. You are not going to be my surrogate. The words hit her like a physical blow. Her face went ashen, and she gripped the arms of the chair. Please, she whispered. I'll do anything. I'll sign whatever you want, agree to any terms. You misunderstand me. His voice was gentle but firm. I'm not rejecting you because you're inexperienced. I'm rejecting this arrangement because it's wrong. Have you ever had a moment where you realized you were about to make a decision that would change everything? What did you do? Tell us in the comments. She stared at him, confusion replacing the panic in her eyes. I don't understand. A few hours ago, I thought I was purchasing a service. A clinical, straightforward business transaction. He reached up, his massive hand dwarfing hers, as he gently covered her trembling fingers. But I can't take something so precious from someone who's only giving it out of desperation. Precious? The word came out bitter. Mr. Jackson, I'm 23 years old. I'm not some delicate flower. I've worked in factories, cleaned office buildings at night, dealt with men who thought they could take whatever they wanted just because I needed the job. I'm stronger than you think. I know you are. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, and he felt her shiver. That's not the point. The point is that your first time should be with someone who cherishes you, not someone who's paying you. Cherishes me? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Mr. Jackson, I can't afford to be cherished. I need money, not romance. What if I told you that you could have both? The words hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that made Elijah's heart race. He hadn't planned to say them, hadn't even consciously thought them, but now that they were spoken, he realized they felt more true than anything he'd said in years. Kalisha's eyes widened. What are you saying? I'm saying that maybe this whole situation, your application, my search for a surrogate, even Dr. Richard's discovery, maybe it wasn't coincidence. Maybe it was meant to happen this way. You don't believe in fate, Mr. Jackson. Your biography made that very clear. He smiled despite himself. You read my biography? I researched my employers. She said it matter-of-factly, but he caught the slight emphasis on employers. That reminded him of the vast gulf between their worlds. Well, you're right. I don't believe in fate. I believe in decisions, in action, in taking control of circumstances. He stood, drawing her up with him. And I've decided that I want to take care of you. Take care of me? Her voice was carefully neutral, but he could see the walls going up behind her eyes. Like a kept woman? Like a woman who deserves to be protected. His hands framed her face, thumbs brushing away tears she didn't seem to realize were falling. Like someone precious. I can't be your charity case, Mr. Jackson. I won't be your guilt project. My name is Elijah, he said softly. And this isn't charity. This is me realizing that I've been searching for the wrong thing entirely. She pulled back, putting space between them. What are you talking about? I wanted an heir. A legacy. Someone to carry on the Jackson name. He ran a hand through his hair, suddenly feeling uncertain in a way he hadn't since his early 20s. But standing here with you, I'm realizing that maybe what I actually need is a family. A real family. We don't know each other, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. No, we don't. But I know that you're brave enough to sacrifice everything for someone you love. I know that you're honest enough to feel ashamed about a lie that wasn't really a lie. And I know that when you walked into my office 3 months ago, something in my chest woke up for the first time in decades. Kalisha was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. What exactly are you proposing? I'm proposing that we get to know each other. Really know each other. I'm proposing that I take care of your grandmother's medical bills, not as payment, but as a gift. And I'm proposing that we see where this leads. And if it leads nowhere, then you'll have saved your grandmother's life, and I'll have learned something about what it means to be human again. She was wavering. He could see it in the way her rigid posture softened slightly, in the way her breathing deepened. This is crazy, she whispered. The best things usually are. I don't know how to be with someone like you. I don't know your world, your rules. And I don't know how to be with someone real. Someone who isn't interested in my money or my power. He smiled, and for the first time in years, it felt genuine. Maybe we can figure it out together. The intercom buzzed, startling them both. Mr. Jackson, your 4 o'clock is here. Elijah looked at Kalisha, at the uncertainty and hope warring in her dark eyes. I need an answer, Kalisha. Will you let me try to prove that you deserve more than a business transaction? She took a shaky breath. What about the baby? Your heir? If we're meant to have children, we'll have them when we're ready. When they're created out of love, not obligation. Another tear slipped down her cheek, but this time it looked different. Less like despair, and more like the fragile beginning of hope. Okay, she whispered. Okay, Elijah. Let's see what happens. He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. Her fingers were still trembling, but they curled around his with a trust that made his chest tight. The first thing we're going to do, he said, is get your grandmother the best medical care available. Today. You don't have to. I want to. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. Let me take care of you, Kalisha. Let me show you what it feels like to be cherished. Outside the office windows, the city hummed with its usual chaos of ambition and desperation. But inside, in the space between two people who had found something unexpected in each other, the world felt suddenly full of possibility. The business arrangement was over. Something infinitely more dangerous, and more beautiful, was just beginning. The private medical facility that Elijah owned on the Upper East Side had seen its share of VIP patients, but none had arrived with quite the same urgency as Dorothy Mae Jones at 6:47 p.m. that evening. Kalisha sat in the leather passenger seat of Elijah's Bentley, watching the city blur past through tinted windows, her grandmother's frail hand clutched in both of hers. The past 4 hours had moved with the relentless efficiency that only unlimited money could provide. Phone calls to the country's top neurologists, a medical transport team dispatched to the modest apartment in Queens, and now this. Grammy being wheeled through the private entrance of Manhattan's most exclusive medical center. This is too much, Kalisha murmured for the dozenth time, her voice barely audible over the quiet hum of the engine. The cost alone. Don't. Elijah's voice was gentle but firm. He hadn't touched her since that moment in his office when she'd agreed to let him try, but she could feel the weight of his attention, the way he seemed to anticipate her needs before she voiced them. The cost is irrelevant. Grammy squeezed her granddaughter's hand with what little strength she had left. The stroke had stolen most of her speech, but her eyes, still sharp despite everything, moved between Kalisha and the imposing man who had somehow become their savior. Mr. Elijah, Grammy managed, her words slurred but determined. Why? It was the question Kalisha had been afraid to ask directly. Why would a billionaire upend his carefully laid plans for a woman he barely knew? Why would he spend what had to be hundreds of thousands of dollars on a stranger's medical care? Why would he look at her granddaughter like she was something precious when he could have anyone? Elijah was quiet for a long moment, his massive hands steady on the steering wheel. Because your granddaughter is the first person in 20 years to make me remember what it feels like to be human, Mrs. Jones. And because anyone who raised someone like Kalisha deserves to live to see what she becomes. Grammy's eyes filled with tears, the first tears Kalisha had seen from her since the stroke. Good man, she whispered, then squeezed Kalisha's hand again. Good man. 2 hours later, the consultation room at the medical center was appointed with the same understated luxury that seemed to surround everything in Elijah's world. Kalisha sat rigidly in a chair that probably cost more than her monthly rent, trying to process the words of Dr. Sarah Chun, the neurosurgeon who had flown in from Johns Hopkins specifically for this consultation. The procedure is complex, but I'm optimistic, Dr. Chun was saying, her voice professionally warm. The experimental treatment your grandmother needs has shown remarkable success rates in similar cases. We're looking at a 6-hour surgery followed by intensive rehabilitation, but if everything goes according to plan, she should regain most of her speech and motor function. Most. Kalisha's voice came out smaller than she intended. I'd estimate an 85% recovery rate, possibly higher given her determination. Dr. Chun smiled. Your grandmother is a fighter, Miss Jones. That's half the battle. Elijah leaned forward in his chair. What are the risks? As with any brain surgery, there are inherent risks. But given the alternative, which is continued deterioration, I believe this is her best chance at returning to a meaningful quality of life. Kalisha felt the weight of the decision settling on her shoulders. This was what she had been willing to sacrifice everything for. This chance, this hope. But now, receiving it as a gift rather than something she had earned, the gratitude felt almost too heavy to bear. When can we schedule the surgery? Elijah asked. I can have an all prepared for tomorrow morning, if you'd like to move quickly. Tomorrow? Kalisha's voice cracked. That's so soon. Elijah's hand found hers, his fingers warm and steady. We don't have to rush if you're not ready. No, it's not that. It's just. She struggled to find words for the fear that was clawing at her chest. What if something goes wrong? What if I lose her? What if this is all for nothing? Then we'll face it together, he said simply. But Kalisha, what if everything goes right? What if tomorrow night you're able to have a real conversation with your grandmother for the first time in 2 years? The possibility was almost too beautiful to contemplate. Kalisha nodded, not trusting her voice. Tomorrow morning, then, Dr. Chun said, making notes in her tablet. I'll have my team prepare everything. Mr. Jackson, I assume you'll want the premium recovery suite. Whatever's best for Mrs. Jones. After Dr. Chun left, Kalisha and Elijah sat in silence, the magnitude of what was happening settling between them. Finally, Kalisha spoke. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Always. Is this real? This, whatever this is between us. Or is this just guilt over almost taking advantage of me? Elijah turned to face her fully, his grey eyes intense. You think I'm doing this out of guilt? I think you're a good man who realized he was about to make a mistake, and now you're overcompensating. And what if I told you that I've been thinking about you every day since our first meeting? That I've been looking forward to our consultations, more than any business meeting I've had in years? That when I saw you in that blue dress today, my first thought wasn't about the surrogacy contract. It was about how beautiful you looked, and how much I wanted to make you smile. Kalisha's breath caught. I'd say that's impossible. You don't know me. I know that you bite your lip when you're thinking. I know that you hold your grandmother's hand like it's a lifeline. I know that you work yourself to exhaustion, but still find time to volunteer at the children's hospital on weekends. I know that you're afraid of thunderstorms, but too proud to admit it. I know that you take your coffee black because you've convinced yourself you like it that way, but you always add sugar when you think no one's looking. She stared at him, shaken by the accuracy of his observations. You've been watching me. I've been seeing you. There's a difference. What's the difference between being watched and being truly seen? Have you ever experienced that moment when someone really understood you? Share your story below. This is moving too fast, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Is it? Or is it just that you're not used to someone paying attention to what you need? I'm not used to someone with your resources. I'm not used to someone who can solve problems with a phone call that I've been struggling with for years. The money isn't the point, Kalisha. Isn't it? She stood abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked the city. How do I know the difference between you caring about me and you caring about the idea of saving me? How do I know this isn't just some billionaire's fantasy about rescuing the poor girl? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Elijah was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was rougher than usual. Because a fantasy wouldn't scare me this much. She turned to look at him. What are you scared of? I'm scared that you'll realize you don't need me once your grandmother is well. I'm scared that you'll wake up one day and see that I'm just a man who's spent so long focused on business that he's forgotten how to be in a relationship. I'm scared that I'll disappoint you the way I disappointed my ex-wife. I'm scared that you'll decide I'm too old, too set in my ways, too damaged to be worth the effort. His honesty was raw, unguarded in a way that made her chest tight. You're not damaged, Elijah. I'm a 42-year-old man who was about to pay someone to carry my child because I was too emotionally unavailable to find love the normal way. I think damaged is exactly what I am. Or maybe you just hadn't met the right person yet. The words slipped out before she could stop them, and she saw the impact they had on him. The way his eyes widened, the way his breath caught. Kalisha. I'm scared too, she interrupted, needing to get the words out before she lost her nerve. I'm scared that I'm going to fall for you, and then realize that I'm just a phase. I'm scared that I'll get used to this life, and then have to go back to my old one. I'm scared that I don't know how to be with someone who can give me everything I've ever wanted, because I've never learned how to want things just for myself. He stood and moved toward her, each step deliberate. What if we were both scared together? What if we figured this out as we went? What if we hurt each other? What if we heal each other instead? He was close enough now that she could smell his cologne, could see the silver threads in his dark hair. Close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Neither do I. His hands came up to frame her face, thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. But I know I want to learn. With you. Even if I'm not sophisticated enough for your world. Especially then. You're real, Kalisha. In a world full of people who want something from me, you're the first person who makes me want to give everything I have just to see you happy. That's terrifying. The best things usually are. She laughed despite herself, remembering that he'd said the same thing in his office. You're going to keep saying that, aren't you? Until you believe it. The space between them seemed to shrink, and Kalisha found herself studying the line of his jaw, the way his lips curved when he almost smiled. She'd never been kissed by a man who looked at her like she was something precious. She'd never been kissed by anyone who mattered. Elijah, she said softly. Yes. If you're going to kiss me, do it now. Before I lose my nerve. His smile was soft, tender in a way that made her heart skip. I've been wanting to kiss you since the moment you walked into my office. Then why haven't you? Because I wanted to make sure you wanted it too. She rose on her toes, closing the distance between them. I want it too. When his lips met hers, it was nothing like the rough, demanding kisses she'd imagined from a man of his power. It was gentle, reverent, as if he were afraid she might break. His hands remained on her face, thumbs stroking her cheeks as he kissed her with a tenderness that made her knees weak. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. That was, she started. Perfect, he finished. That was perfect. A knock on the door interrupted them, and they stepped apart as Dr. Chen entered. Miss Jones, I wanted to let you know that your grandmother is asking for you. She's been prepared for tomorrow's surgery and is resting comfortably in her room. Thank you, Kalisha said, her voice still slightly breathless. As they walked down the hallway toward Grammy's room, Elijah's hand found hers again. Are you ready for this? No, she said honestly. But I'm ready to try. That's all anyone can ask for. But as they approached Grammy's door, Kalisha couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking towards something that would change everything again. The surgery, the recovery, the question of what came next for her and Elijah. There were so many ways this could go wrong, so many variables she couldn't control. For the first time in her life, though, she wasn't facing the unknown alone. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The surgical waiting room at 5:47 a.m. was a sterile monument to anxiety. Kalisha had been pacing the same 12-foot path for the past 4 hours, her sneakers silent against the polished floor, while Elijah sat motionless in one of the leather chairs, his massive frame somehow making the expensive furniture look fragile. The surgery should be finishing soon, he said quietly, checking his watch. Dr. Chen estimated 6 hours, and we're at 5.5. Kalisha nodded without stopping her restless movement. She'd been unable to sit still since they'd wheeled Grammy into the operating room, her grandmother's final words echoing in her mind. Take care of my baby girl. She's going to be fine, Elijah said, and it wasn't the first time he'd offered that reassurance. You don't know that. The words came out sharper than she intended. You count just by good outcomes, Elijah. Sometimes terrible things happen to good people, and all the money in the world can't stop it. He stood and moved toward her, intercepting her path. You're right. I can't guarantee anything. But I can promise you that she has the best surgeon in the country, the best equipment, the best chance possible. And if it's not enough, then we'll face that together too. She stopped pacing and looked up at him, taking in the lines of exhaustion around his eyes, the way his usually perfect hair was disheveled from running his hands through it. He'd been here all night, hadn't complained once about the uncomfortable chairs or the terrible coffee, or the fact that he probably had important meetings he was missing. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Really? Not the pretty answer about me making you feel human. The real reason." Elijah was quiet for a long moment, his grey eyes searching her face. "Because 24 hours ago, I was a man who thought he could solve loneliness by purchasing an heir. And now I'm a man who can't imagine facing tomorrow without you in it. That's not an answer. That's just, I love you." The words hung in the air between them, simple and devastating. Kalisha felt her breath catch, felt the world tilt slightly off its axis. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Is it? I've spent the last 6 months looking forward to our meetings more than anything else in my life. I've memorized the way you laugh, the way you tilt your head when you're thinking, the way you light up when you talk about your grandmother. I've been finding excuses to extend our consultations because I couldn't bear for them to end. You don't know me well enough to love me. I know that you've worked yourself to exhaustion for 2 years to take care of the woman who raised you. I know that you volunteer at the children's hospital on your days off, because you can't stand the thought of kids being alone when they're scared. I know that you cry at commercials about dogs, but try to hide it because you think it makes you seem weak. How do you? I know that you've never let anyone take care of you because you've been too busy taking care of everyone else. I know that you're terrified of needing people because everyone you've ever loved has left you, one way or another." Tears were streaming down her face now, and she didn't bother to wipe them away. "Stop. I know that you haven't let yourself want anything for yourself in so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to be wanted. But I want you, Kalisha. Not as a surrogate, not as a project, not as someone to save. I want you because you're brave and beautiful and stubborn and kind, and because when you smile at me, I remember what it feels like to be alive." "This is crazy," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "The best things usually are." She laughed through her tears. "You're going to keep saying that until I believe it, aren't you? Until you believe it." Before she could respond, the doors to the surgical wing opened, and Dr. Chen appeared, still in her scrubs, but with a smile on her face that made Kalisha's knees weak with relief. "The surgery was a complete success," Dr. Chen announced. "Your grandmother came through beautifully. The procedure took a bit longer than expected, because we found we could repair more damage than we initially thought. But that's good news. Very good news." Kalisha sank into the nearest chair, the relief so overwhelming it left her shaking. "Is she? Can she? Will she be able to talk?" "She's already talking. In fact, she's been asking for you since she woke up in recovery." Dr. Chen's smile widened. "She wanted me to tell you that she's proud of you and that she approves of your young man." Elijah's hand found Kalisha's shoulder, a gentle, grounding presence. "Can we see her? She's being moved to her room now. Give us about 20 minutes to get her settled, and then you can visit." After Dr. Chen left, Kalisha remained in the chair, staring at her hands. The relief was so intense it felt almost like grief. All the fear and tension of the past months, finally releasing in a rush that left her feeling hollow and fragile. "She's going to be okay," Elijah said softly. "She's going to be okay," Kalisha repeated, as if testing the words. I can't believe it's real. It's real." He knelt beside her chair, his hands covering hers. "She's going to recover, and she's going to be proud of the woman you've become, and she's going to get to see you happy." "Happy?" The word felt foreign on her tongue. "I don't think I know how to be happy." "Then let me teach you." She looked up at him, this man who had somehow become her anchor in the space of a single day. "What are you asking me, Elijah?" "I'm asking you to marry me." The world stopped. Kalisha felt her heart skip several beats, felt her breath catch in her throat. "What? I know it's fast. I know it's crazy. But I also know that I've never been more certain of anything in my life." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I had this made yesterday while you were with your grandmother. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that it was too soon, that you'd think I was insane. I do think you're insane. But I also think I might be falling in love with you too." The smile that spread across his face was radiant, transforming his usually serious features into something boyish and hopeful. "Is that a yes?" "That's a, let me see the ring first." He opened the box, revealing a diamond that was breathtaking in its simplicity. A perfect solitaire that caught the harsh fluorescent light and threw rainbows across the waiting room walls. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Not as beautiful as you." "That's such a line." "It's also true." She looked from the ring to his face, this man who had somehow seen past her defenses to the woman she'd forgotten she could be. "If I say yes, what does that mean? What does our life look like?" "It means we figure it out together. It means I support your dreams, nursing school, working with kids, whatever makes you happy. It means we take care of your grandmother together. It means we build a family the right way, when we're ready. And if we're not compatible? If this is just some fantasy that crashes and burns, then we'll deal with it then. But Kalisha, I'd rather risk everything with you than play it safe with anyone else. When someone asks you to take a leap of faith, what goes through your mind? Have you ever had a moment where you had to choose between safety and the unknown? Tell us your story. She was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. You realize I'm going to be a terrible billionaire's wife, right? I don't know how to do charity galas or society parties or any of that. I don't care about any of that. I'm going to embarrass you at business dinners. Impossible. I'm going to want to keep working, even after we're married. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. I'm going to need time to learn how to be in a relationship. I don't know how to be with someone. We'll learn together. I'm scared. So am I. Good. She smiled, feeling something light and buoyant rising in her chest. Because the best things usually are. Is that a yes? That's a yes. When he slipped the ring onto her finger, it fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. The diamond caught the light, throwing sparkles across the ceiling, and for the first time in her life, Kalisha felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. I love you, Elijah said, and this time the words didn't scare her. I love you too, she replied, and meant it with every fiber of her being. He stood and pulled her into his arms, and when he kissed her, it was different from the gentle kiss in the consultation room. This was a kiss that tasted like promises and forever, like the beginning of something beautiful and terrifying and absolutely right. When they broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. So, she said, her voice slightly breathless, what do we do now? Now we go see your grandmother, and tell her she's going to have a grandson-in-law. She's going to cry. Probably. She's going to want to plan the wedding. Let her. She's going to want it to be huge and expensive and… Kalisha, he interrupted gently. I have $3 billion. I think I can handle a wedding. She laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound he'd ever heard. This is really happening, isn't it? This is really happening. I'm going to be Mrs. Elijah Jackson. You're going to be my wife. Your wife. She tested the words, liked the way they sounded. I like that. Good. Because I intend to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret saying yes. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Miss Jones? Your grandmother is ready to see you now. As they walked toward Grammy's room, Kalisha's hand in his, Elijah felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Complete and utter contentment. Yesterday he'd been a man trying to buy an heir. Today he was a man who'd found his heart. The transformation was terrifying and wonderful, and absolutely worth every moment of uncertainty. As they reached Grammy's door, Kalisha paused. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me this isn't a dream. Promise me I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and find out this was all too good to be true. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed the ring he'd placed there. I promise you, Kalisha Jackson, that this is just the beginning. Kalisha Jackson, she repeated softly. I like the sound of that. So do I. They walked through the door together, toward Grammy's bed, toward their future, toward the life they were going to build together. And for the first time in either of their lives, they were both exactly where they belonged. 6 months later, the morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, casting golden light across the marble floors that Kalisha had once thought were too pristine for real life. Now, with Grammy's knitting basket in the corner and Kalisha's nursing textbooks scattered across the coffee table, the space felt less like a museum and more like a home. Kalisha stood in the kitchen, still wearing Elijah's button-down shirt from the night before, watching her grandmother move around the space with the confident steps of someone who had reclaimed her life. The surgery had been even more successful than Dr. Chin had predicted. Grammy's speech was clear, her movements steady, and her spirit as indomitable as ever. Child, you're going to burn those eggs if you don't pay attention, Grammy said, her voice carrying the gentle authority that had guided Kalisha through childhood. Sorry, Grammy. Kalisha turned back to the stove, flipping the eggs with practiced ease. I was just thinking. About the wedding? About everything. Kalisha smiled, glancing at the engagement ring that still caught her by surprise every time she saw it. About how different life is now. Different good or different scary? Both. Grammy moved to stand beside her, studying her granddaughter's face with the keen perception of someone who had been reading her expressions for 15 years. You're happy, baby girl. I can see it in your eyes. I am happy. Really happy. Sometimes I feel guilty about it. Guilty? Grammy's eyebrows rose. Child, what do you have to feel guilty about? It all happened so fast. 6 months ago, I was cleaning office buildings at night and worrying about how to pay for your medication. Now I'm marrying a billionaire, living in a penthouse, and you're healthy again. Sometimes it feels like I didn't earn it. Grammy was quiet for a moment, then reached up to cup Kalish's face with gentle hands. Baby, you've been earning happiness your whole life. You earned it every night you worked until your hands bled. You earned it every time you chose to take care of me instead of living your own life. You earned it by being the kind of woman who would sacrifice everything for family. But, no buts. That man of yours, he didn't fall in love with your circumstances. He fell in love with who you are. And who you are is someone who deserves every bit of joy this life has to offer. Kalisha felt tears prick her eyes. I love you, Grammy. I love you too, baby. And I'm so proud of the woman you've become. The sound of the elevator doors opening echoed through the penthouse, followed by Elijah's familiar footsteps. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, his hair slightly mussed from his morning run, wearing track pants and a t-shirt that made him look younger than his 42 years. Good morning, beautiful, he said, moving to kiss Kalisha's temple. Morning, Grammy. Morning, son, Grammy replied, and Kalisha felt her heart warm at the easy affection between them. Grammy had adopted Elijah as family almost immediately, and he had embraced the role of grandson with surprising enthusiasm. How was your run? Kalisha asked, leaning into his warmth. Good. I stopped by the hospital construction site. The children's wing is ahead of schedule. 3 months ago, Elijah had surprised Kalisha by announcing that he was funding a new pediatric wing at the hospital where she volunteered. When she'd asked why, he'd simply said, Because you light up when you talk about those kids. I want to give you more reasons to light up. The kids are going to love it, Kalisha said, serving eggs onto 3 plates. They're going to love having you as their head nurse even more. Kalisha's acceptance to the accelerated nursing program had been another gift from Elijah, not through money or influence, but through his unwavering belief in her abilities. He'd encouraged her to apply, had sat with her through late-night study sessions, and had been more proud of her acceptance letter than she'd ever seen him about any business deal. I still can't believe I start next month, she said, settling at the breakfast table beside him. I can, Grammy said firmly. You're going to be the best nurse they've ever had. Speaking of which, Elijah said, reaching into his pocket, I have something for you. He handed Kalisha a small wrapped package. Inside was a stethoscope, beautifully crafted and engraved with her initials. Elijah, she breathed, running her fingers over the engraving. It's perfect. For the perfect future nurse. You spoil me. That's the plan. Grammy watched their interaction with a satisfied smile. You know, when I first met you, Elijah, I wasn't sure what to make of you. This big, intimidating man who could buy and sell the world, but was nervous about meeting one old lady. I was terrified, Elijah admitted. I wanted your approval more than I'd wanted anything in years. You had it the moment you looked at my granddaughter like she hung the moon. She did hang the moon, Elijah said simply, making Kalisha blush. Y'all are going to make me diabetic with all this sweetness, Grammy said, but her eyes were bright with happiness. After breakfast, Kalisha found herself in the study that had become her favorite room in the penthouse. The walls were lined with books, and Elijah had installed a comfortable reading chair by the window where she could study or simply think. She was curled up there now, reviewing wedding plans, when he found her. Penny for your thoughts, he said, settling on the arm of her chair. Just thinking about how much has changed. Good changes. The best changes. She looked up at him, this man who had somehow become her everything. Do you ever miss it? Your old life. You mean the life where I was so lonely I was willing to pay someone to have my child? Where I measured my worth by the size of my bank account and the fear in my competitor's eyes? He shook his head. I don't miss that man at all. He wasn't all bad. He was successful, powerful. He was empty. Elijah's voice was quiet but firm. I didn't realize how empty until I met you. You didn't just save me from making a terrible mistake with the surrogacy, Kalisha. You saved me from a life that looked successful on the outside, but was completely hollow on the inside. I didn't save you. We saved each other. Maybe. But you definitely saved me first. She stood and moved to the window, looking out at the city spread below them. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Dr. Richards hadn't found out about your inexperience. Yeah. What if we'd gone through with the original plan? What if I'd just been your surrogate and nothing more? Elijah joined her at the window, his arms wrapping around her from behind. I like to think we would have found each other eventually. Maybe not the same way, but somehow. You really believe that? I believe that some people are meant to find each other. I believe that you were meant to be mine, and I was meant to be yours. Even though we're so different. Especially because we're so different. You make me better, Kalisha. You make me want to be the kind of man who deserves you. You already are that man. I'm trying to be. She turned in his arms, studying his face. I have something to tell you. What is it? I've been thinking about the wedding. About what I want it to be like. And I want it to be simple. Not because I don't appreciate grand gestures, but because the most important thing is you and me and the promises we're making to each other. Whatever you want. I want Grammy to walk me down the aisle. I want your mother there, even though she's still not sure what to make of me. I want the kids from the hospital to be our flower girls and ring bearers. I want it to be about family, the family we're creating together. That sounds perfect. Really? You won't miss the society wedding? The 500 guests, and the photographers, and all of that. Kalisha, I've spent my whole life performing for other people. This is the first time I get to do something just for me, just for us. I want it to be exactly what you want. What I want is you. Everything else is just details. Good answer. She laughed, the sound light and happy. I love you, Elijah Jackson. I love you too, future Mrs. Jackson. Future Mrs. Jackson, she repeated, still marveling at the sound of it. Having second thoughts? Never. Just grateful. For all of it. For you, for Grammy's health, for the chance to have a life I never dared to dream about. You deserve all of it and more. We deserve it. Together. He kissed her then, soft and sweet, and Kalisha felt the same flutter in her chest that she'd experienced that first day in his office. She wondered if that feeling would ever fade, if she'd ever get used to being loved this completely. I have a surprise for you, he said when they broke apart. Another one? You're going to spoil me rotten. That's the plan. But this one isn't from me exactly. Before she could ask what he meant, Grammy appeared in the doorway, her arms full of what looked like photo albums. I thought you might want to see these, Grammy said, settling on the couch. I've been putting together a wedding album of sorts. Pictures of you growing up, pictures of us together, pictures of the life you're about to start. Kalisha sank down beside her grandmother, Elijah joining them on the other side. The first album was filled with photos from Kalisha's childhood, her first day of school, Christmas mornings, birthday parties. Grammy had captioned each one with careful handwriting. Look at this one, Grammy said, pointing to a photo of 8-year-old Kalisha in a nurse's costume for Halloween. Even then, you knew what you wanted to be when you grew up. I wanted to take care of people, Kalisha said softly. Like you took care of me. And now you're going to take care of sick children, and you have a man who's going to take care of you. The next album was more recent. Photos of Kalisha and Elijah together, most of them taken by Grammy during their visits. There was one of them cooking together, Elijah's massive frame bent over the stove, while Kalisha laughed at something he'd said. Another of them reading together, Kalisha's head on his shoulder, both of them completely absorbed in their respective books. When did you take all these? Kalisha asked. You two were so busy falling in love, you didn't notice an old lady with a camera, Grammy said with a smile. The final album was the most surprising. Photos of Elijah alone, taken during their engagement party. In one, he was kneeling beside a little girl from the hospital, his expression gentle as he listened to something she was saying. In another, he was dancing with Grammy, his face creased with laughter. He's a good man, baby girl, Grammy said quietly. He loves you the way you deserve to be loved. I know, Kalisha whispered, looking at the man who had somehow become her whole world. 2 weeks later. The wedding was everything Kalisha had hoped for, and nothing like she'd expected. The ceremony was held in the hospital's new children's wing, surrounded by the kids who had become like family to her. Grammy walked her down the aisle with steady steps, her eyes bright with pride and joy. When Elijah saw her in her simple white dress, with her hair crowned in the flowers that the children had helped pick, he cried. This powerful man who commanded boardrooms and negotiated billion-dollar deals had tears streaming down his face at the sight of his bride. You're beautiful, he whispered when she reached him. So are you, she whispered back. The vows they exchanged were simple but profound. Elijah promised to cherish her, to support her dreams, to love her exactly as she was. Kalisha promised to trust him, to let him take care of her, to build a life together that honored both of their dreams. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the children cheered, Grammy cried, and Kalisha felt her heart so full it might burst. Later, at the reception held in the hospital's garden, Kalisha found herself dancing with her new husband under the stars, surrounded by everyone they loved. How does it feel, Mrs. Jackson? Elijah asked, his voice warm against her ear. Like coming home, she said simply. Like I've been waiting my whole life for this moment. No regrets. Only that it took us so long to find each other. We found each other exactly when we were supposed to. The best things usually are worth waiting for. He laughed, recognizing his own words. I love you, Kalisha Jackson. I love you too, Elijah Jackson. As they swayed together in the garden, surrounded by the people who had become their family, Kalisha thought about the desperate young woman who had walked into a billionaire's office 6 months ago, willing to sacrifice everything for the person she loved. That woman had been looking for a transaction, a way to save her grandmother's life. Instead, she had found salvation, not just for Grammy, but for herself. She had found a man who saw her worth, who cherished her innocence, who chose to protect rather than exploit. She had found a love that transformed them both. And in the end, that was the most beautiful miracle of all.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.